Howdy folks, welcome back to what's supposed to be video 2 on the Sabre, and I apologize in advance that I have not been able to get to the comments or just simply read the comments and answer any questions. I have been absolutely slammed, which is one reason why this is down here and not on the lift, which we're going to get to in here in a second. I will get to them as soon as I can, but no guarantees. I just have so much going on right now that I just don't have time to do it. Yeah, you see folks, this Valkyrie is still here and it needs a ton of stuff. So this is just something that's been occupying a ton of my time. So again, I apologize, but once we get done with this, which is brakes, carbs, fork seals, and all sorts of stuff, then I can kind of slow down and catch up on the comments and hopefully be able to do that for you. So why is this down here and not up here? We had a comeback. And that's unusual for me to have a comeback on some sort of project. And can you guess what project it was?
Maybe this one?
Show you what was wrong with it, show you what we did, and I'll give you a final disposition on it later on in the video. And the next thing we're going to cover while the Sabre was on the lift is taking off those blasted coolant tubes, the bypass tubes. What a pain in the butt those are usually. Now these weren't too bad. Usually you have to destroy the damn things to get them out and then buy some off Fleabay. But we did pretty well, so I'll show you the techniques I used on that. It might help you out if you have a similar situation. So the next thing we get into while it's down here in the ground is I think I got a little tweak in the back of the frame as far as that tail section goes. Well, I should say had. Pretty sure I took care of it. I'll go over what I found and how I dealt with it. I was a little concerned about the fact that the frame clearly had some sort of a twist in it. So at that point, we're going to get into tearing the carbs down to bits and go over some stuff about them. But I'm also going to show you a machine tool haul from my neighbor down the road. Man, I tell you what, I scored big time on some machine tools for like dirt cheap. Dial indicators, all sorts of cutters, indexable end mills, things like that. I'm sure you're going to see some of that stuff on future machining videos. So while we're taking the carbs to bits, I'm going to go over some stuff in regards to the rubber slide diaphragms. That's a question I get in a lot of videos, and at least in the past when I've done Magna videos. I have one torn diaphragm on one carburetor, so I'm replacing all 4 slide diaphragms. I'm going to go over the vendor I used to buy them from, and also how you select them, and because it is a little confusing, and I think you really might find that important if you're going through a same situation or a similar situation on a bike you're working on right now. And pretty much toward the end, I'm going to go over a little science experiment, well, more like a chemistry experiment, where I try to do some work on some irreplaceable or unreplaceable rubber carb parts from these carbs from the Sabre, and almost completely scrapped them. Ended up making 4 stink bombs out of them. And I tell you what, it worked in the end, but getting there was a real pain. So I think you'll really enjoy that. So let's get on with the show. I went to deliver this the other day, had it in a trailer and offloaded it at the owner's house. When I put it in a trailer, it ran fine. I actually walked next to it and friction zoned the clutch and pulled this right up into the trailer, strapped it down, no problem. It ran fine. I could not hardly get this thing to start at all over at his place. It would not run for crap. It was missing on a cylinder. After it ran for a while, it did pick up. It was number 3 actually. This is not an engine internal issue. This is a fueling issue. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why. Because as you can see, I have the carbs off and they're over here on the bench. And I honestly do not know what the problem is. Yes, maybe they could have been tuned a little bit better. Overall, it ran well enough where I thought it was going to be a deliverable and rideable unit. And there was absolutely no way that was the case. The other problem was on the side stand, it was leaking fuel on the exterior of number 1 carb. In other words, around the float bowl where it meets the carb body. Bring you over to the carbs now. I was having trouble with these float bowls anyway because these gaskets, these are the ones that were on there before. These gaskets are swelling up, shrinking down. This one doesn't look so bad, but the one on number 1 was a little bit squirrely. The one on number 2 is really bad. I mean, you can see it's all over the place here. And very hard to get back in. So I've ordered new O-ring gaskets for the float bowls that I have to eat. But I think this was the one on number 1. And you can see it's fairly well established in its groove. And it wasn't pinched or nothing. I think the only thing I could think of actually was what the cause was. Let me turn a light on here for you so you can see. Now when I did these carbs originally, there was a problem in the accelerator pump nozzle on number 1. This nozzle right there was actually loose. This is supposed to be pressed in from the bottom. Because it was loose, it would just ooze out fuel around the base of it. And when you hit the accelerator pump, it would lose enough pressure where it would just dribble out the other 3. So I just made sure that that little hole on the inside of it was aligned properly, and then JB welded it in place. And it worked fine. You see these plugs, I'll show you number 3 here. These plugs are what plugs the hole that they drilled and they machined to push that little nozzle in on all these carbs. Number 2 is a little different because of course it's got the entry port to feed the other ones, but it's pretty much the same except for that. Number 1 was all wallered out, like somebody was digging at it or something with a screwdriver at some point, or it was simply a casting defect. I went ahead and just JB welded that in. I have to sand this flush to seal that off. There was nothing else I could do. I think the fuel was coming out of there and running around. You could see it dripping off the outside edge of the float bowl. You know, these are the pressed in jets I put in from an aftermarket kit that I had for 4 carbs. Because the original, which is right here, remember I drilled them out too far, reamed them out too far when I was trying to diagnose the running problems before I figured out the top end was shot. And so this is one of them here. Now these are 35 standard as well. They were probably reamed out to about 45, and I went bigger than that. Well, I had to end up reaming these out, and my reamer for that smaller size either broke or I can't find it. I have ordered a new reamer set, but they're made in Germany and they take a while to get here, and I can't wait for that. So I used the next size up. I may have actually gone slightly too big on it. I hope not, but if I did, then we're into other problems. I'm just going to have to wait for another carbs, kit set for more pressed in jets and start over, but I'm willing to give it a shot. We're going to go aggressive on this thing. As far as the jetting goes, the slow jets, we're going to leave them as they are. We're going to run about half a turn on the slow screws, the fuel screws, and I'm going to take those slides, they're still in here, and I'm going to machine 6 thou off the bottom of them at the slide cutaway. That's a trick that you can do on these old round slides. Fix a transition issue when they're potted or when they have velocity stacks or something like that. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go aggressive on it. I'm going to take the chance. I have another set of carbs over here that I'm working on. So their slides very similar to this. You can see that cutaway on the bottom there. We're going to take some material off of that, and I've done this before on another set. I would say it's an early CB750. I think a 72 or 73 a few years back, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and it worked fantastically. But I just want to bring you up to date as to why that is over there and not up there. All right, so we'll go into the clips now of tearing down the rest of the engine stuff while it was still up on the lift. And as far as the cooling system and so forth, I got the head covers back on just to protect up there and the spark plugs. And of course that alternator cover on the other side. I wanted to replace it with this one because this is one for a Magna. And I'm like, well, it looks almost identical, but it's not. It's not as deep this way. The one that's on this bike, it says MB4, which is the middle number on a part number, MB0 for the Magna. So it don't fit, so we're gonna have to source one of those. Another thing that's kind of good to see is all these hose clamps are original. They're OEM. They take a 6 mil, not a 1/4 inch. Somebody hadn't gone through and replaced all these. I really don't think there's been a lot of tomfoolery going on as far as screwing around with this motor, with the exception of that aftermarket electrical crap with those lights. I think that's a good sign. Hadn't been tampered with. I want to get these crossover tubes out since I was a dummy, and I flexed this one pretty good when I was trying to lever the carbs up because the thermostat and everything was still attached to it. It started to leak over there. I want to inspect this tube, make sure it's not cracked, and also inspect the aluminum where these things go into. Because if that's really corroded or something, then we got a problem. Now it's not something we can't overcome, but it's a problem. And so what we're going to do is just do this. Let me get these hoses off. Then we'll take these M6s out that have an 8mm head. They're exactly the same as on the Magna. And we'll see if we can get these out. Yeah, this one was really stuck around this back side there. What you do is you take a big nose picker tool. I think that's the best thing for it. And you work it in there and try to get it around. Finally, when I got it around the backside with some silicone spray, you could hear it go snap, and it separated itself from that. But it's just, wow. I mean, that one was really, really stuck. I don't think that's ever been off either. Whoops, going the wrong way, dummy. You gotta watch these guys as well, these M6s. Good. You can snap them off real easy too. This is just a little clip. So we'll just work on this one first. I'm sure it's not gonna be hard at all. Not. Yeah, these things just absolutely suck getting them out. I know these V4s, so kind of know where to look for problems. Getting it to wiggle is a good sign, but that's only a part of it. Usually there's a ring in there of corrosion, and that O-ring does not want to slip over it. Look at that, that one's actually moving pretty good. Son of a gun. Huh, we might get lucky. Maybe, maybe not. And they bend really easy or crush really easy. You can't really do a whole lot of torquing on them. All right, getting some good movement here. See, we're hitting that ring. We're hitting a spot that's between the widest part of the tube at that O-ring. Usually that metal O-ring groove is now the widest part of the tube because the O-ring's all flat. And there's like a ring of corrosion. And it just doesn't want to let it go by. So you got to keep working at it. You might have to pull the heat gun out and try that. I don't want to use an open flame, especially with this crap, but heat gun might be the way to go here in a minute. All right, we're going to have to try a little persuasion. All right, we're making some progress now. On this one at least. Can't go too far with it until they both go though, so they got to come out pretty square. All right, let me work on it a little bit more off camera. All right, I got it. I'm sorry I didn't see it, but you know, it's one of these things where you got to work on it very patiently for a while, and I'm just not going to leave the camera running for nothing. And I never know when it's going to go, but so there's the ends there. These aren't really that bad considering the other ones I've seen. Basically, when you stick your finger in and wiggle it around, and when you hear it moaning, you know it's good. And then you can feel to see if there's any chunkiness or anything. These actually don't look bad, but I won't know until I clean them up with a Dremel and a little brass brush. I can't speak. A Dremel and a brass brush. Here's a little trick that'll help you out on some of these. I got this side pretty easily freed with tapping it with a dead blow, but this side was being a little bit problematic. So what happens is once you get this side out on this side, you put this in and then you can push down on that side and it kind of levers it. So you're actually using the pipe itself, you know, within limits, within reason, to kind of lever it out. And as long as you don't damage it, like bend it up or anything, or really dent it really bad, then you're good. But this one's a little more corroded on the inside, but not necessarily on the outside. Now that's easily explainable because you know, these are facing mostly up, and so they're going to get water and shit that's going to move down around them rings, those O-rings. When I put these in, I grease them up pretty good with an appropriate product. I honestly can't remember what I used last time. We're going to do the same thing on these guys that we did on the Magna though before they go back on. These are going to go in the lathe, and we're going to go ahead and skim that face, and we'll also use a precision, like one of those old 1-2-3 blocks, and flatten these surfaces where they go, because you know, I'm not going through that again because they're not leaking now most likely, but when you take them off, things start warping and shit, so we'll go ahead and do that at a later time. But on this particular bike, because it's got the original oil line which comes off of the transmission, and the same thing was on the Magna as well, comes off transmission, that oil is your top end. You know, we're going to have to get that out of the way, put new banjos in it to do that. We're going to have to do that anyway to get this off, so that'll have to come out eventually, and we'll re-banjo that out. I'm not going to do any top end oil bypass kit on this. I don't even know if you can buy one anymore now that Dave Dodge is gone, but they all look about like that, so I'm not going to show you them all. hit it with the Dremel and just wiped it out with a little brake clean on a rag. It needs a little bit more, but what I'm looking for to make sure there's no serious pitting or anything in the side bore of it, the main bore. And they look fantastic, so we're not going to have any problem with those getting sealed up back with new O-rings and so forth. So off camera, I'm not going to do this today, this part here. It's really not as critical as checking these guys out because, yeah, there could be a little corrosion in there, but it's very unlikely. This is really where the problem is up here. It's very hard for shit to get in there around this casting and into that area where the O-ring is. So I'm going to wait on this probably to the point where we go into another stage of this and take the water pump out and so forth, and then we'll deal with all this. So now we know that this is all good. We know the compression is good. We know the valves, well, at least it's sealing good as far as compression goes. Who knows if the valve stem seals are worth a damn. But with the mileage this thing has on it, but that doesn't matter. I mean, if it's been sitting for a long time and those valve stem seals are stuck to the valve stems, that's why I barred it over real slow to start off with. See if and I squirted a bunch of oil in there to see if we can get those things to break loose without tearing. Who knows, right? It's happened before on other bikes. Then we're going to come back and go over the stuff on the frame here and the wiring. First thing I was doing is I was looking at this wiring comes around the side here, next to the cowling, and I'm like, why is this all, bodged up? And it turns out that I don't think this is supposed to have two wire filaments as far as the rear lights go. I think what the owner did was these are either aftermarket or he got two of the fronts that do have the two filaments and a ground, and wanted to wire it up so it had markers on the back as well as turn signals. I'm not 100% sure if that's the case or not, but that's why he had all these scotch locks and wires jumpered so it would get power to the, essentially like, usually on a Kawasaki it's a brown wire, I'm not sure what it is on this, to get just regular power for like markers and your instrument lights and other lights that are just dim lights like the ones on the front signals. That's the way he had it set up. I don't really care about that. We're not going to use that wire, so I'm going to put it back to original. So I started hacking up the wiring and the other signals down in there, and I was looking at this thing and realized that this whole back end was twisted this way, and I had saw that before with the grab rail. The grab rail was leaning this way. I thought it was the metal brackets that go here. I'll show you those later. And they were a little tweaked, but not tweaked enough to cause that kind of a problem. So I kind of straightened them out best I could the other day, and it was still tweaked. And I said, you know what, it's got to be a frame issue. So I did some measuring, and I could absolutely see that this bar, the level part of this bar, was not parallel with another companion bar like up in front. It was definitely leaning that way quite a bit. And when you leveled the bike and you put a level across it, you could really see it when you stick this out that wide and look at a level surface. So she was definitely tweaked downwards. So after evaluating the side here, I found what the problem was. And again, I'm sorry I did not take a clip of this, but I was in a hurry. What had happened was this gusset here, this gusset that holds for this extended length of the frame out here, this gusset was pushed in right behind this boss. So it was folded in. It was kind of like a jog. So it would come out, go in, and then come back out. So something hit this on the side, and you can see, of course, this foot peg's bent up, which I did notice, obviously. The other one is too, but not as bad. So it either was dropped on its side, or maybe he had a luggage rack on this thing with an excessive amount of weight. I don't know. I even gave consideration to the fact that maybe he was pulling a trailer with this. He may have actually had either a fabricated or a commercially made trailer hitch and was pulling a trailer. And that would explain why both of them are bent, because they kind of got pulled in from the forces. I don't know. Once I realized that, I said, this isn't too hard of a solution then. I just took the whiz wheel and slit that gusset, heated that up with a torch, and just banged it up till I got it pretty close. I started welding it up, reevaluated it. Didn't like it. It seemed to be too high at that point. I thought it would pull it, but it didn't. So I recut it, and then I rebent it, which even closed that gap up even better, so that was better for re-welding the second time. So I re-welded it and rechecked it, and so that's where we're at. So I'm going to reassemble the rear clip here. We'll see if I was right. I'm going to get that wiring straightened out off camera. Come back, take a look at that. That'll pretty much bring you up to date as far as where we're at in the bike until we get up back on the lift. All right, this is as good as it's going to get. Looks pretty damn straight with everything else. The grab rail, the plastics, everything. I spent a considerable amount of time on this today trying to get it right. This thing was really tweaked. I'm not terribly happy with the alignment of this stripe on this side, but right now it is what it is. We'll deal with it another time. I'm only doing this because I'm killing time, because I'm waiting on parts for that, waiting on parts for this, waiting on parts for everything. So I figured why not do something, at least somewhat productive. And I didn't like the way it looked. Now the wiring is not totally done. I'll show you what that looks like underneath here with a little B-roll clip. I have to order another waiting on parts. I got to order some more bullet connectors because I'm out of the male bullet connectors, the crimp connectors. I am going to hook up the third wire on these rear turn signals. The service manual says or shows only a 2-wire turn signal in the back, which is what I would expect. There is no separate wire circuit to plug in the third wire for what you want to call the markers on these turn signals like they have on the front. I don't know if Honda used them on this one. I think they probably didn't, and the previous owner simply purchased some front signals, but embossed on the inside here, and I should have taken a damn picture of it. It's embossed it's essentially molded into the plastic. It says, in this case, it would be right rear or left front. And so they are designed for rear. So I don't know. There is no circuit for it, like I said. There's no dedicated circuit. There is a tail light circuit. So I'm going to go ahead and tap into that. And that way that'll be energized. But like I said, I can't do it. I don't have the parts. So we'll do that at a later time. But I think it's pretty good. Now also what I did was, this plastic and this is really typical. These old bikes have been sitting for a while. This plastic is all distorted, probably from heat. And so this thing was popping out on the side. There's nothing to clip it in. I went ahead and drilled for a little M5 screw, a black screw, and just put a time cert into the plastic with some glue on both sides. That'll hold that in nicely. And so it looks better and it's more solid. Yeah, sometimes you got to do that on these kind of things, but you know, it is what it is. So we'll put this video to bed right now as far as any more shooting on this until we get her back up on the lift, which I don't know when that's going to be. And then we'll film some more clips once some parts come in and we can deal with the carburetors and all the other crap. So we'll see you then. All right, folks, I think it's time we get into taking apart the carbs on the V4 Sabre. We'll tear them down. I'll go over some stuff regarding them because I think you'll find it interesting. I'm not going to go into great detail. They need to be ripped down anyway, so I'll just film various clips kind of fill you in on that. But before we do that, let me show you something else. This tool haul that I got a hold of this morning down the road, all machinist tools and things like this. Absolutely great as far as what I was able to get for like dirt cheap. In fact, well, let me tell you what happened. All right, so my neighbor, he calls me yesterday. He says, hey, I got some machinist stuff. I thought he meant he needed some machining done. He said, no, I got some stuff. Come down and pick it up. It's yours for nothing. And I said, well, I can't make it today, so I'll come down tomorrow. So that's what I did. I went down this morning after I did some chores and stuff around here. And he said, take it all. And it's just all this great stuff that he got from another neighbor of ours down the road who's got a CNC shop behind his house in a pretty big metal outbuilding. Apparently got a new machine, and so he's got new tooling as well. So he sold this to my other neighbor down the road, and the one with the Harley shop basically does all Harley stuff. Now he does machining there, but engine machining mainly, where I'm, as you well know, more general machining in my operation. So he said, take it. Well, I didn't want to take it for nothing, so he told me what he paid for it, and I said, I'll give you half, so he agreed to that. Which was, I'm telling you, dirt cheap. I mean, dirt cheap anyway. So anyway, here's what we got. Bunch of drill bits, nothing special here. These parabolic, I think they're called, drill bits. The ones that are for deep hole, I think that's what they're called. That's pretty cool. Just a couple of those if you need to start some deep holes. Got some Morse Taper 3 drill bits. I've never seen one like this before. It almost looks like a milling tool instead of a drilling tool, but it's got to be a drill with this shank on it, you know, the MT3 taper. So I don't really know. If anybody knows what this is, I'd sure appreciate you reaching out, because it looks more like a reamer than anything else, but I can tell you this is a drill. This is 1 1/8 inch. You can tell that he's ground this back, a certain amount back from the end, probably for deep hole operation, which is fine with me. And again, Morse Taper 3, which is what my tailstock is. Along with this one, same thing, pretty self-explanatory. This is a Morse Taper 2, but I think I have an adapter, if I'm not mistaken, 2 to 3. But the end of it's not in great shape, so we might just use it for something else, I don't know. So that's really cool. Now, we got some indexable end mills too. Missing an insert. I got to take these inserts out and read the number on the back of them and see if I can get them. There is some inscription on here, like laser etched in. It says Miltech USA and some sort of a number. But I even have more than that. Got another indexable end mill over here somewhere. So I got 2 of them there just like this, 2 fluted, or I say 2, not fluted, but 2 indexable carbide inserts. I did look at the back side of one of these inserts. I forgot what the number was. I'll look it up online. So that's 3/4 inch shank, and I can collet that in the mill, no problem. And I've always wanted some indexable end mills, so I got 2 of them that are identical. A whole crap load of T-slot cutters in here, like this. Really nice shape. Got a couple of dovetail cutters as well, and these are super nice shape, like almost brand new. Like, I don't know if they've ever been used. These are very handy for certain operations. Also got this, I don't know what the hell, what kind of end mill this is. It has like tips that come out on the side. I've never seen anything like it. The only thing I think of is to make a groove, like a very narrow and a very shallow snap ring groove inside something. I don't know what this is. You got me on that one, because, you know, as far as the length of the, let me go see if I can go against the box to see how much it sticks out ain't much. So I'm not sure what this is. I got 2 of them. I also got these guys, which are very handy. These are, I'm pretty sure these are more used in inspection rather than work fixturing, you know, because this is kind of a chintzy kind of clamp. So you put whatever round part into a V-block, you can put it on a inspection table, run an indicator across it, do whatever you want. But you can also use them for fixturing. Just have to add some clamps to it. So these are very handy. Got 2 of those. And just a whole assortment of other things. Now these are really great. These are M3 titanium spiral flute taps. I don't even have any M3 taps. And here's spiral flute titanium. I mean, there's like 20 of them in here. They look like this. Got a bunch of slitting saw, or not really slitting saw. You can use them as slitting saws, but basically the style of slitting saws that you'd use in a slitting saw arbor for cutting slots and things like that. And some of them are extremely thin, which is very handy, because I've run into situations where I've wanted to slit something, but my slitting saws are too wide. A lot of this stuff is metric, which is why my neighbor down the road gave it to me, because he didn't use any metric. But they're all 1-inch arbor so far. I have a 1-inch arbor, but these are really cool. This is a solid carbide jeweler's saw. So this is really cool. Solid carbide. Look how thin these are. And again, a 1-inch, takes in a 1-inch arbor. All I'd have to do is take the key out of the arbor to use these. Wouldn't be a whole lot of tool load on something like this anyway. You wouldn't need a key. So that's really cool. You got to do a very thin slot in something. That's perfect. I got 2 of those. They look unused, completely unused. Now these guys in here, this is 1-inch arbor with a key, so I could use that. This one is also, got to go in the Evapo-Rest if it's usable at all. This one's pretty nice too. This guy would be unusable. It's not only the wrong arbor size, but it's pretty worn out, and even if it wasn't, that would be a pretty big saw. This would be more appropriate for like a horizontal boring mill with an overarm setup, you know, to do that kind of milling, like slab milling. But these things could still be used with the 1-inch arbor on something if I needed to do something. You'd have to run a pretty slow speed on this, and that would put a lot of load on that VFD because it would be running slow. So I don't know if I'd actually do it unless I was working in some soft material, but something like this, absolutely. You could run this a lot faster. It's a lot thinner. And of course those thin guys here. Here's another slitting saw that came with a bunch. It is a 1-inch arbor with a key. It is a 6 by 051, so I guess that's 6 inches by 51 thousandths thick, and just under a 1/16 then, and a 1-inch diameter, like I said. So that is very handy to have, because if you have something with very little clearance as far as getting your arbor into something, you got to reach into an area, in other words, and get a slot in. This is perfect for it. I could most definitely run something like this. Again, it would have to be run at a fairly slow RPM because of the size. I don't think this has ever been used. I think it's brand spanking new. So this is something definitely to keep in mind if we need to do some classic reach around into a part and do a slit on it to split apart, making some sort of crimping part or something like that. With a 6-inch saw, there's about nothing that we can't reach with it. So really, really slick find this morning. And my neighbor called me and said, hey, come down and get this crap. There's also a little vise. It's just kind of a cheapo vise, but it's brand new. Doesn't have a mark on it. So I'm going to put all these things away. Oh, I forgot the most important stuff almost. Well, this isn't it, but this is a Starrett angle, adjustable angle gauge. I'm not really sure how to use this, to be honest with you, but you know, it'd be similar to anything else where you'd have to do a 45-degree angle. And you know, I've seen them before, but I've never used one. It needs to be cleaned up. And this is just one of these vernier depth gauges. You know, you want to kind of do a go, no go on a depth. But I believe this is also Starrett. Yeah, this is Starrett. This is Starrett. Got a couple of, along with that other indexable end mill, got a couple of thread gauge, 60 degree and so forth. This one is, yeah, this is listed as a 29-degree screw gauge, tool gauge. So that's a square thread. That might be an Acme thread. I'm not really sure. I'm not familiar with Acme too much, but I've been watching videos like Max Grant's doing one, not an Acme thread, it's the metric version of an Acme thread, which I can't remember what it's called now. He's using a similar gauge like this for the width of the end of the tool that he had to grind for. That's a little above my pay grade, but it's still something nice to have. But let me show you the really cool stuff. Got a Mitutoyo 5/10 graduation, so a half a thou. A jeweled dial indicator, and only comes with just little two little bases or the ends that come with it, but that's fine with me, and looks really good. I mean, this is fantastic. It is a number 513-202. That was in the bunch as well. And then this guy here, which I've never heard of before, this is a metric indicator, which I don't have one. Now I do. It looks like the manufacturer is Telok, something like that. LT310, and the graduations are 0.01 millimeters. So that's pretty damn cool. So now I've got a metric indicator if I need it for something, and I've got that Mitutoyo. I mean, that's just bitching. I mean, this is great. I looked at those and I went, holy cow. These indicators are not cheap, especially this Mitutoyo stuff. So yeah, so this is what I got. So I just kind of wanted to show you really quick what it was, and we'll get this stuff all put away. We'll go ahead and get on these carbs. Let me tell you what the number of these carbs are in case you want to know. That's usually what I start off with on these V4s to give you an idea of what we're working on. I looked at it already. These are 71As. If you remember correctly, I believe that the Magnas are 50As or 51As, and the Sabre is 51 or 50. I can't remember which. So what that references, I don't know exactly, and I haven't measured these bore sizes yet. As far as I know, they're larger carbs, obviously, than the 750. Down the stink hole here, basically, but you know, it's really irrelevant because I know they're the correct carbs for the bike, but we do have a lot of problems with them. And the first thing I looked at, because I've already taken the slide out on one carb, is the slide diaphragms. So let me pull this one out. This is the one I believe that I took it out. Yeah. Might as well start right there. I'm going to talk to you about these diaphragms real quick. I suspected right off the bat that these diaphragms would be completely shot. The way all the other rubber looks on this bike, I think it was in a very hot environment, like in a shed, like my shed is, and everything got basically toasted. So this is the slide out of what would be the number 2 carburetor right here. Okay, so this is number 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And you can see I've disassembled the slide. These are metal aluminum slides. They're not plastic slides. That's important because when we get to the solution on the diaphragms here, at least the solution I'm using, you need to know that and you need to know why. Let's go ahead and take out number 4's slide next to it. And this slide has not been removed yet, so it's probably stuck. And we'll take a look. I'm not sure if the spring lengths are different, like they are on the 82, 83 Sabre, between the rear cylinders and the front. I assume they are. So we'll make sure that we keep these separated, and I'll label them as such for the front 2 cylinders. And that's not too bad, actually. This one's better. Yeah, this one's actually in pretty good shape compared to number 2. Okay, so there's your slide in all its glory. The problem with number 2 was that the diaphragm was torn. That did not happen when I took it apart. It wasn't that stuck. It came out basically like this one did. So these things just deteriorate and they tear. Somebody may have done that before, you never know. That's the story I'm sticking to, at least. So if you compare the 2 of these, you can see that on the bottom, you got that ring, that red ring, and on the top, there's a black plastic ring that's put on, and then they smush it in some machine to peen that over, basically. And that sandwiches the diaphragm in at the appropriate clocking because of this little tang right here. The tang is really important as far as the location goes, relative to the front of the carburetor, which is indicated by this little flat and these 2 holes. So this goes toward the intake side of the carb, not the air intake side, the motor intake side. All right, so that's just really important. We're going to replace them all because, again, this one's bad, and I assume there's probably at least one more other bad one. Let me take the other 2 out. We'll evaluate those. I'll do it off camera, and then we'll go into solution really quick, and I'll explain how you do that. All right, here is the spring from number 3. So now we're on the back carbs. Flipped it around, and 1 and 3. And as you might expect, the slide spring is shorter. And the reason why is because the front carbs are more downdraft, so they're more horizontal for 2 and 4, and therefore there's not as much gravity to help the slides come back as far as they're returning back against the spring, and so the spring in the front is longer. So you just have to mind that and verify it with your service data, but this makes total sense that our back carbs that are more vertical here have a shorter spring because it doesn't need as much spring power. That's a shame that one of them's torn, rather, because these guys are not so bad. The slides themselves, the needles may be different between the front and the rear carbs. So I'm going to go ahead and label these off camera just to keep them straight. Now that I know these 2 came from the front, 2 and 4, and these in the back will be 1 and 3. All right, as far as repairing these, putting new slide diaphragms in, we're going to replace them all with these. I ordered these from JBM Industries. They make some really good stuff. I did have a set on the Magna originally. For when I originally did that back in the day when I first got that bike, they worked fine. As you saw in a previous video, if you watched any of the earlier Magna videos where I did some carb work, did eventually break down and crack. These seem to be a little thicker. I think they've maybe upgraded their manufacturing and their product a little bit as far as the whatever the composite material is for the rubber here. Luckily, I had those 4 from Sabre. All I had to do was put the Magna needles in them and then use the appropriate springs that time, at least, instead of screwing them up like I did the first time. Watch the video, you'll see what I mean. Now, these are exact matches for this. If you go on their website, it can be a little confusing. So you have to read through all their information. That's why I mentioned that these are metal slides. It's very important for identification of a replacement diaphragm from JBM, whether it's a metal or a plastic slide. because he mentions that in any of these slide selection processes as far as going down a chart, whether it's for metal or plastic. These are the ones for metal. It even says for the 1100 V4s, but there's another one on their website for Honda 1100, which would be a different 1100 and not the V4, and it specifically says plastic slides. So these are the ones for the metal slides. Now how these are going to work, and don't let if you see the little edges that are rough here, don't let that throw you off. That doesn't make any difference. It's the lip on the back here and the size of what's called a tire in the center. He calls it a tire. And the outside diameter of this that you have to measure it on your carburetor. I think that's 72 millimeter or something. And then you find the right ones. Yeah, 72-S. Because this S part number is sized for this groove inside there. Kind of hard to see because I left this part in. There's actually a groove in there, groovy, that's smaller diameter than the major diameter on the outside here. That's where this tire is going to go, and we're going to glue it in. So I left this red piece in because I wasn't sure until I got these, but the thickness of this part up in here would never fit with the plastic piece on, so you have to remove the top plastic piece, which is again visible on this slide right here. And ultimately we're going to have to remove this bottom one, and then you just carefully work the slide in, the diaphragm rather, into the slide. I've already marked this one with a piece of tape, and this is where that little tip would go. That goes down here on the carburetor where these little holes are, the vacuum holes, which lines up to this relief in the caps. Okay, so this is all kind of a system that you have to keep in mind when you put it back together. These two holes go toward the intake side of the engine. I think I mentioned that before. And so I just marked it so when I go to put this one on at some point in time without that red piece in, we slip this over. So that's all there is to it really. As long as you get this clocked right, then the slide's going to go in right. Because if you don't, then when you go to put this in, it's going to be doing this and it's going to be off when the slide's in the proper position. As far as the relationship of those two holes to the front of the carb or the intake side of the carb, this will be off. Now I know this kind of looks weird because, you know, of that serrated edge almost on that, but just a feature of it when it came out of the mold. And these fit nicely in there. Goes in that little notch real well. And we're not going to have any problem with it. If we do, we'll do our little trick and we'll put a little bit of silicone grease, work them in, get the caps on, test them, you know, by giving it a flick. So that's how we're going to solve this. Really on these old bikes, there's two types of diaphragms. There's this type that looks perfectly fine and this type that's torn. And these things are 40-something years old. So it's a matter of time before this turns into this. So we're just going to replace them all and be done with it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here, you know what, let's pop a couple of float bowls off, and I don't know about these guys here, maybe this one over here, and we'll go ahead and take a look at some of the innards and see how bad it is. And yes, this is a JIS bit for the impact. This is the way to get these out. You need that little zap this thing applies to it. Well, all in all, that's not terrible. Considering, yeah, I mean, that's not too terrible. I mean, it's nasty, but it ain't terrible. I do not know what the stock jetting number is at this time. I have not looked it up, and I'm not going to take the jets out at this point to look at them. The floats are exactly the same as the ones that I put into the Magna. I wish I had bought another set of them now. I got another set that fits a Valkyrie. Yeah, these come from Momentum. They're Too Fast Moto carb float and pin, and I'm not really sure yet if they're the right. I don't think they're the right ones. Yeah, these are different. Unfortunately, they will not work because they're definitely Valkyrie. Valkyries are non-adjustable. These are adjustable, so I was just kind of curious. So again, I ordered a set of 4 of them from Momentum there, or Too Fast, whatever it is, for the Magna. I think I'll just go online a little later today and I'll order another 4 if they have them to replace these. I can guarantee you that some of these are probably cracked and they're going to get heavy, and this plastic just doesn't last forever. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get all the rest of the float bowls off. We'll take the floats out, set them aside, and then move on to something else. All right, so here's one of the float needles, and this is quite possible an original. Original Honda ones are actually pretty good. I would not be surprised if we were able to put these back in and actually seal off. and we might try them. I label and I do still take pictures even though I know these carbs pretty well, just to make it, easier on me later on. And I've disconnected the connecting linkages, anything that joins the carburetors together. I have removed at least one side. You don't need to do both sides because you can still separate that way. Get the easiest one, like for example, this connecting linkage for the throttle between both banks. It's harder to get this one than that one. So get the easy one, take some photos. What I'm gonna do now is, since I've taken a few pictures and done some other stuff, I'm gonna take a number 3 JIS bit here, and we're gonna go ahead and get these guys off the rack so we can take a look at these funnels, because these funnels, I've already looked for these online. I remember replacing these on the Magna and I was able to find them brand new. I think they were aftermarket, but yet I still was able to find them. I have looked for these, nobody's got them. So we're gonna do some shenanigans with that wintergreen oil and alcohol. I've been watching videos on it and try to get these restored. They're not cracked, I don't think, but they're really, really stiff. We'll give them a good scrub first with just mild soap and water, and hopefully we'll be able to bring those back because these funnels are simply not available. Now, that's just the way it is. And then the rest of it's gonna probably be done off camera because you saw the majority of it here. Just watch out for springs between the two halves of the carbs. The adjuster springs, sometimes they come with, sometimes they go flying, so just be careful. These are not really that difficult, they're not. These do not look like they've been touched. Well, that one might be actually pretty easy to get. Then we're gonna go over parts real quick. And again, I'm gonna disappoint some of you on the parts. I know I am, with the choice I'm making. 2, 4, 6, 8. Get back there, you scumbag. That's already out. Okay. What did I do, miss one? No, they're just stuck. All right. These have some sort of dowel pins, alignment pins on them. And they'll get rusty just like any other one. See this side, and this is one of the things like on the Valkyrie. It goes from bank to bank, but on this particular model and other models, they're on the same side, this connecting linkage. Okay, this connecting linkage goes from number 1, it should be number 2, right? 1 to 2, yeah. 1 to 2. Linkage is right here. There's not enough room for it to go past the body of the carb here until we get a little bit more separation. So once we do that, and we can separate this guy and kind of move it out of the way, which is stuck. And the fuel joints are going to keep it from moving a whole lot because the fuel joint goes straight through. There's a not straight through, but there's a joint here, and a T here. So the fuel inlet's here, and just the fuel goes straight through. So you just got to kind of watch that so you don't want to break them. So you got to kind of get them loose all at once. And there's one, which is nice. There's a spring. This goes between the carburetors. I got those as well. Here's one of your adjuster springs that's ready to fly. And it's pretty much scrap anyway because it's probably doesn't have much springage left to it. You can get those from Red Eye. The same damn ones on the Valkyries. So if you wanted to replace those springs virtually on any of these Honda carbs, just go on Red Eye Technical and you can buy a little bag of those springs. I got to order a crap load of Valkyrie parts, so I'll probably order an extra bag and use them on these carbs here. There's a fuel. There's your fuel T on the main inlet. Might make one of these. This guy's a little on the stuck side. It's just froze up on them, on those dowel pins. It's kind of hanging. There it goes. Now we're free. So once you're free, you can get this guy out of the way. You see those dowel pins there, pain in the ass. And since we've got this guy already off, now we can kind of work this out, get a little bit more room to, whoops, another spring, to work out this arm. Oh, you know, I forgot to take that hose off, but we'll just pull the. This is a vent tee down here that I just released. It's kind of like a you know, kind of like a Rube Goldberg puzzle thing. There's another adjuster spring. Get this out of here. There it goes. Just corroded in. So there we go. This come out. Remember, this one was harder to get at on this carb, to take that welcome back cotter pin out. Now on these ends here, you do have a little bushing because there ain't no bearing. So secure that, because I don't have any of these, and you probably don't either. There's a fuel joint, not a fuel T, but a fuel joint. Easy to make. We'll leave that on there. This is how the vent T's go between the two carbs, and then your main vent coming up or off. So it's just set up like that. And if you want, you can label them. I'm going to go ahead and just label this one, why not? And put 3 little dots on that spot that goes into 3. And then I just know. It just saves me a hassle in the future when I go to put them back together. I took a bunch of pictures of these, but why not? Short fuel joint. I hate it when that's short. And other than that, that's as far as I'm going to go on them right now, at least with you guys. The rest of this has got to get done incognito, because we're going to have to work on these and get everything cleaned up, and that's kind of bullshit. But that's what I wanted to show you as far as these funnels go. Let's see, they're so hard. I'm not sure if I can. Yeah, we should be able to get it out this way. It's probably, yeah, we can. So we'll take one of them out. So these funnels can be a real pain in the ass, and there's little holes in them too. Now I don't know which orientation this little hole is supposed to go in the service manual don't say, but if it was me, I'd be putting that hole down, because I think what they're worried about is if any water or anything got in there, there would be a place for it to drain out from this funnel, because they are pointed up. But I don't know. We haven't touched this one, and it is pointed in a down position, so that's what I recommend to you. So is that one. So if you got a little hole in these funnels like that, put it down when they go back in. So yeah. So I'm gonna, like I said, I bought the shit for it. I'm gonna go ahead and try to revive these. I'll have to report back to you. They probably would be usable in their current form, but they are pretty stiff. So anyway, that's all I got for you on carbs in this video so far. There may be some more later on, but you know. So I will report back to you in the future to let you know what's going on with these as far as the status, you know, jetting and all that crap or anything else I find. But hopefully you found this part of it interesting, because I do get a lot of carb questions. Okay, folks, couple of quick things left. Then we're going to close this abomination of a video out. Thank God. I just wanted to cover a few things about parts and that sort of thing. Anyway, let's go over to the box or bench, whatever you want to call it now. Talk about the parts, and then we'll complete this horrible video. Well, maybe not quite that horrible, but anyway, it's a matter of opinion. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. So anyway, you can see here I have a couple things in front of me besides a pencil and, of course, my belly, which is getting bigger by the day. Here's a Keister aftermarket carb rebuild kit ×1. There's 3 more of these, brothers and sisters, over in a box. Yes, we're going to use aftermarket parts on this engine, on these carburetors. I know I preach over and over again in my videos not to do this, but remember, folks, we do not have a known over here. We have an unknown. We do not know the status of this engine. We don't know the status of the transmission. And when I tell you what the cost of these parts were for OEM, you're going to understand 100% why. Naturally, I go to Partzello.com, my go-to place, and I totaled out everything that I would need, kind of in a spreadsheet, actually. I put it all in a spreadsheet, part number and cost, because my intention was to order them OEM. And when you multiply everything ×4, we're at about 420 bucks. Float valves and seats were in that price as far as all of them go, 4 carbs. But I can't justify putting over 400 bucks OEM parts and carburetors on an unknown like I was just talking about with the engine and the transmission. These are Keister kits, so they're not terribly bad. Made in Japan, supposedly. And Jim Bob, or Jimbo, whatever his name is, Billy Joe Jimbo from Superbike Surgery in the UK, he uses Keister kits. He apparently doesn't have comebacks with them, so I would say that we're going to give him a shot, because I've never used a Keister kit. So we're going to try them on these carburetors. We can always go back into them in the future if we need to, assuming I'm even going to keep this thing, and assuming the rest of it proves out. Over here is one of the replacement floats I was talking about from Momentum. These Too Fast Moto. There's your part number, 25-70505 for the adjustable ones. You can see the little tang there. You said tang. And these are absolutely the ones for these VF carburetors, and these, I should say these here, are the ones that are in those carbs, and they work perfectly fine. These came super fast, and they're very inexpensive. 12 bucks a piece, or 9, I forgot. They're really, really inexpensive. And this place is excellent to deal with, Momentum. I would highly recommend them, and I am highly recommending them. So yeah, aftermarket kits, aftermarket this of course, but that's all you can get pretty much, and we're going to try it out from there. Hopefully it works out. I've already had these from Brake Crafters. This is front caliper kits. Actually, you fit a Magna, but it's the same calipers, I'm pretty sure. This is from V65, you know, the guy that does the water pump stuff. He's not in Arizona anymore, but he's Montana or something like that, I don't know. And I got all sorts of crap from him, which is really cool. I shouldn't say crap, it's good stuff. Up to and including an O-ring sealing set for the carburetors. He sells one separate, and this looks pretty neat too. I'm gonna kind of tinker with the parts, look at the keysters and look at these, and see which ones are better. The big round ones are actually float bowl gaskets. Sometimes they come round like this and just put them in the grooves, as opposed to the ones in there that are probably shaped like the float bowl. I don't know yet. So these are from V65, and I've got wheel bearing seal kits for it. Here I got a sump pan O-ring because I intend on dropping that sump at some point and checking and replacing the O-rings inside there. But this is the main thing I'm digging for right here, is this fuel cock, both big and small petcock repair kit from V65. That's because there's two fuel cocks on it, as I showed you in a previous video. They're technically non-serviceable because they're riveted together, but it's got all the stuff in here to put screws after you drill the rivets out and rebuild the packing and the O-rings and so forth inside both of the fuel cocks. This bike's got two of them, and don't ask me why. And here's a water pump kit, some wheel seal kits. Last final thing I wanted to mention was, I talked about in this video about these intake funnels, and using the wintergreen oil and alcohol, which I did do. I only put them in for 24 hours. And I said, I'm going to go check those. I did a 70-30 split. So 700 mLs of alcohol to 300 mLs of wintergreen oil. And when they came out, they were about 3/4 of an inch or more larger in diameter. They had swelled the shit out of themselves, where there would be no hope for those going back in to the places that they normally go into the air box. And naturally I had somewhat of a heart attack, but I said, well, they're nice and soft now. They did come out nice and soft. They're pretty good. I think the consistency is very close to just what they would be if they were brand new. But they do fit now because they shrunk back. These things stunk so bad, and they still stink so bad. As far as off-gassing goes, I had them in here up on the shelf after I took them out of that solution and rinsed them off. Put all four of them up there. I couldn't stand it out here even with the door open. It was so bad. It would permeate this place with just toxic smell of wintergreen to the point where you were like, my eyes are watering, you know, you're coughing and shit. And I said, these are going outside. I tried them in the shed. You couldn't walk in the shed. They were like little stink bombs. But after sitting outside for about 3-4 days, they have come back down to size. I did try them in the airbox up there. They do fit. They fit fine. So we're going to be able to use them. Plan B was going to be, I was going to buy some aluminum tubing from McMaster Car and machine some velocity stacks to the same length as these. I can buy tubing, and it would give me enough material to make this little, what would you call it, a little shoulder on there. Put an O-ring in the groove on the back of the car body, because you know, you happen to have a nice groove right there where these things typically sit when they're mushroomed between, or smushed between the airbox. Smushed, you like that? And the car body. and I could just put an O-ring in there of whatever size or make one, and it would work fine. I was kind of looking forward to doing that actually, but these things have straightened themselves out. They were being naughty, but now they're not, and so we'll be able to use them again. They're not even a hint cracked, and they look pretty much perfect actually, so I'm actually pretty happy with that. All right, that's going to be it on this video. I know it's a long one. I just wanted to try to cram in as much as I could into this video that I thought you would be interested in seeing. For the future, I'd like you to stick around and see more what's going on around here with the Sabre and anything else that comes in. To do that, all you got to do is just help me out a little bit. Give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and you get notified when I put more crap like this up. I totally screwed up that outro. So until next time, don't just repair, restore, and we'll catch you on next video.